Welcome everyone to the fourth in our training series on statements of purpose and research proposals. So we'll start with our usual reflection, which is what experience do you already have with writing statements of purpose and research proposals? And what questions do you have about coaching them? Have you already had clients come to you asking for help? What kind of resources were useful for you when you were writing your statement of purpose for grad school? What did you find confusing? So please take a moment to think about this, discuss with a partner, and then we'll move on. To remind you where we are in our series, after statements of purpose and research proposals, we'll go to visual communication, focusing on slides and posters. We'll then focus on technical writing, first at the planning and organization level, and then at the prose level. We'll have our workshop for those of you who are interested in creating your own workshop. This will be on best practices for that. And then we'll end with oral and real-time communication, focusing on presentation skills and networking. So why are we focusing on statements of purpose and research proposals for this portion of career communication? Well, statements of purpose are part of graduate school applications and fellowships, and research proposals are part of graduate fellowships and beyond. So it'll be useful for you to become familiar with these components, both for yourself and for potential clients. We'll start by reviewing application strategy using strategic communication, where we're again going to be focusing on the who, why, what, and how. In this case, the who is the department or the fellowship. The why is because you want to match with the department or a fellowship and be accepted. The what is your personal brand and qualified match. And then the how is focusing on the structure, keywords, and making the materials memorable and meaningful. Starting with the why, which is you or your client, you need to clarify both your short-term and long-term goals. So the short-term goals are to get accepted or be matched with the program. And so the questions to clarify are, why do you want to attend this program, and why are you a good match for this program? The longer-term goal is to establish a career with your values. And so these questions, and I've listed these 5 explicitly, are in more detail than you previously saw in the CVs and resumes training. And they're now categorized by these terms that are often used in business missions and business strategy, but they're very useful for personal strategy as well. And it starts with the big picture, your vision, which is, where do you want to go? Where do you want to be in 5 years or in 10 years? The mission is, what path is going to take you there? The details are non-specific, and there could be multiple paths that could take you to your vision. And so this is an opportunity to think about what that path could look like in the big picture. And then there's your experience or your research. And this is where things get more specific. What steps are on that path? The skills and education are what make your steps successful. So what has or will make your steps successful? And then there's your personality, which also involves the kind of community that you think is going to be supportive for you on this journey, because no one does this alone. So now let's turn our focus specifically to statements of purpose for graduate applications. Now, a note on terminology, which is that sometimes a statement of purpose is also called a statement of objectives, or a personal statement, or a statement of intent. Sometimes it even refers to research, and so a research statement. And ultimately, there's 2 categories that statements tend to cover. One is your personal experience, and one is your research experience. For the purposes of this training, a statement of purpose is going to refer to your personal experience, but the content and the context for what a particular terminology on an application is looking for will likely be visible in the kind of prompts that they give you to answer. Now, circling back to the why for statements of purpose specifically for graduate applications, here is a quote from a graduate school application reviewer at Berkeley who says, "It must come out very clearly what the student wants to learn, study, perform research on, and why they want to do it. Why is the student applying to work with me? Now, how do you know this before you actually work with someone? Well, you research the program as deeply as you can. You saw something similar for resumes and CVs, but in this case, it's more specific. So there's the school's vision and mission. There's also perhaps the department vision and mission. There's also what the department requires academically or offers academically, who their alumni are and where they are. There's also what labs are in the department. What are their research areas? Uh, who are the groups? Who are the members? What kind of publications do they put out and where? And what's the culture like? So you can learn about this by starting with a web search, activating your network, having an informational interview before you apply, and again, if possible, finding out who is going to read your application. Your application materials are then going to highlight the qualified match between the department and you. And that intersection of the department and you is what defines that area of qualified match. And to make your qualified match memorable, you're going to again define your personal brand, which is like your personal main message. It's a one-sentence summary of how you are unique and memorable, so that someone on the application committee, when talking to perhaps someone else on the application committee, can say, oh yeah, that's the applicant who fill in the blank. Now, an effective statement of purpose is not an autobiography. So do include things about your own personal motivation, your personal experience, the meaning of why you're conveying these experiences and how that determines a qualified match. But when it comes to things like childhood stories or stories of beating the odds, these are situational. They can be useful if they're unique and do contribute to your motivation and match and brand. But if a reviewer is reading these and it's not clear why they're reading them, then they're not going to be part of an effective SOP. And in general, don't dwell on your personality or fish for sympathy. A reviewer can kind of tell. However, a statement of purpose can show relevant resilience. So maybe you switched majors and still have some requisite classes to take. Well, consider this excerpt. In order to be fully capable of tackling problems at the nanoscale, I still need to take coursework and learn research skills in biology, chemistry, and engineering. I only have minimal training in these three areas, so the amount of coursework I need to do as a biological engineering student is sizable. I find this exciting rather than burdensome, however, since the obstacle standing between me and the research in which I desperately want to be involved is this training. Now let's take a look at what a statement of purpose could be structured like to convey your meaning. Now it starts with your personal narrative, your own personal motivations and goals describing your passion and your individuality. This is the path that you've been on so far. It then conveys your experiences, the meaning of those experiences, and how they convey qualified match. So what have you learned and accomplished so far? And how have those experiences and skills kind of set you up for success? Then there's the specific research interest looking forward. These are the research areas and projects that you want to work on and why. What professors do you want to work with? So what skills and experiences do you need to kind of keep being successful on this path that you want to take that is ultimately leading towards your vision? And here, ending with career goals, that's looking forward briefly. Where is it that you ultimately want to be? Where is it that you want to go? And how is matching with that department going to be part of that journey? Now, if your journey so far has focused on one type of research, then your narrative is going to be more chronological in nature. We're going to talk about research experience 1 and then 2 and then 3, how those all demonstrate qualified match. But if you've had multiple research interests, then your narrative is going to be more thematic in nature, where perhaps you've had research experience 1 and 2 and then something different. You still need to synthesize those somehow to demonstrate the qualified match. Let's take a look at a specific example. I'm going to be showing you a statement of purpose for an applicant applying to the Nuclear Science Engineering graduate program here at MIT. And on the website, we can find this about NSE. So what do you notice looking at what we can find on the website? What kinds of things stand out to you that talk about the vision, mission, goals of the department? So we can see that they care about advancing the frontiers of nuclear science and developing applications of nuclear technology for the benefit of society and the environment. And then they mention society and the environment again. A repeated phrase suggests that it's very important to the department and so useful to reflect in an application. And the specific research areas of NSE here are scientific fundamentals focusing on energy generation, security, and health. And similar to CVs and resumes, how an application is going to convey qualified match in a meaningful way is to reflect the keywords relevant to the department, use these active verbs, specific actions, and quantified impacts that are easy for people to visualize and therefore are memorable, and also talk about the concrete impacts of their previous actions, which convey the meaning for why they're important. Now is your opportunity to look through an example graduate application statement of purpose. And as you're reading through this, keep in mind, what keywords do you see reflected? What was memorable to you about this application? What would you say this applicant's personal brand is? So if you were on the application committee and talking to another person on the committee, you would say, this is the applicant who, fill in the blank. And then what open questions would you ask a client who came in with this statement of purpose asking for any feedback? So please take about 5 minutes to look through the attached statement of purpose. Think about these, discuss this with a partner, and then we'll move on. So now let's switch gears to talking about statements of purpose for fellowships. Now there are many types of fellowships available. For the purpose of this training, we're going to be focusing on the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program because that's the program that your clients are most likely to come asking for help with. So it can be useful to become familiar with the program solicitation and process for the NSF GRFP. Now, if you're not already familiar with it, there are many things to keep track of. There are different due dates for different disciplines. This year, one of the biggest changes is that all reference letters are due before the actual application materials. And there's been some changes to the program solicitation. But in order to best help you or your client really develop that qualified match, then it can be helpful to read the solicitation more carefully. So here are some excerpts from the program solicitation, which is available through the website here at this long link at the bottom. So what do you notice as you're reviewing the solicitation? What stands out to you as being important to demonstrate in an application? Here are some keywords that stand out for me. Demonstrated potential, high achieving, globally engaged, leaders, a comprehensive plan, individual interests and competencies, experiences, attributes, and academic achievements, and here's that repetition, again, demonstrated potential. So the NSF solicitation is looking for a rounded, comprehensive proposal and person that demonstrates potential. It funds potential, not specific research achievement. And while the program does fund all areas of science and engineering supported by the NSF, there is an emphasis on high priority research areas in alignment with NSF goals and priorities. These are not particularly easy to find in the solicitation. Here is a link to the current priorities and goals at the bottom, but they are there. These are accelerating regional innovation across the nation, strengthening U.S. leadership in AI and emerging technologies, advancing climate research and development, bolstering the nation's research infrastructure, promoting equity in STEM education and workforce training, and increasing research security and oversight. So if you or your client's research areas or interests align with these, then it's going to be really useful to reflect that in the application, but only if it's authentic. Don't force it. But if it does, then do it. The program solicitation goes on to explicitly describe the merit on which both the statement of purpose and the research proposal are going to be evaluated. So they both need to describe how they're going to advance knowledge within a field or across different fields. That's the intellectual merit. They both need to demonstrate a benefit to society or advancing a specific or desired societal outcome. This is a broader impact. Both should be present but different in the statement of purpose and the research proposal. So I'll mention that again in just a couple slides. Both the statement of purpose and research proposal should suggest and explore creative, original, or potentially transformative concepts, be well-reasoned, well-organized, and based on sound rationale, incorporate a mechanism to assess success, and demonstrate how well qualified the individual team or organization is, as well as conveying that there are adequate resources available to the PI. The program solicitation goes on to give additional guidelines for broader impacts, which can be accomplished through the research itself, activities that directly relate to the project, or activities that are supported by the project. And then it gives a list of examples. And this is going to be useful to reference because likely if a client comes to you, if they've had help from their PI has likely helped more with the intellectual merit portion of the application and less so with the broader impacts. And so this might be the first time that they're really considering what makes for an effective broader impact. And in broader impacts, there are ethical considerations. So if there is a broader impact that has to do with a community, especially an underserved community, then we want to be aware whether that community expressed an authentic need, whether they were involved in the co-creation of their solutions and can benefit from the relationship with the applicant who's developing this broader impact. And we just want to be cautious that the applicant and their broader impact isn't ultimately just taking advantage of a community in order to kind of meet a checkbox in order to satisfy this portion of the application. And if that's the case, it's usually not malintent, but it's usually just a lack of training and a lack of consideration. And so as a coach, you can ask questions of a client that can really help them think through some of these ideas. The last part of the program solicitation that I want to direct your attention to is the formatting. An applicant must take the formatting restrictions seriously or the application will be disqualified. So this has to do with the size of the paper, the font size, the spacing, the margins, and the page limits. Now what we're calling the statement of purpose, this year they're calling the personal, relevant background and future goals, which is 3 pages limit. And what we're calling the research statement, they're calling the graduate research plan statement, which is 2 pages. And in both the personal and research statements, applicants should address both intellectual merit and broader impacts under separate headings. Here's a potential structure diagram for the NSF GRFP personal statement. Starting with the background, who are you and what are your interests and attributes? And what is your mission? Then there's the relevant background of what experiences and skills have you had that are going to contribute to the benefit of this fellowship, and what will you gain? The intellectual merit is what potential do you and your research have to advance knowledge? And the broader impacts is what potential do you and your research have to benefit society? It then closes with future goals, that's that future mission and vision, naming explicitly the graduate program and research area that this fellowship will be in and how the NSF GRFP is going to benefit your career. So now is an opportunity for you to look through an example NSF GRFP statement of purpose. In your material packet, you'll have a discipline-specific one that you can look over. So as you're looking it over, what keywords from the solicitation do you see reflected? What was memorable about the applicant's SOP? What would you say that applicant's personal brand is? And if a client came to you with the statement of purpose, what open questions would you ask this client? Now let's switch focus to research proposals. Another note on terminology that in general, a research proposal or a plan is part of a package to get funding, and a research statement is part of a package to get an interview or a job. Different proposals have different scopes. Now, in general, most grants and faculty applications have 3 aims, and one grant can be considered to be about 2 to 3 papers worth of work. For the NSF GRFP, that's considered to be 1 PhD's worth of work. So those should have 2 to 3, if possible, independent aims, so that if any one aim doesn't work out, another aim could be successful, but only if authentic. And a faculty application should have about 5 to 7 years worth of work done by the whole lab. So those can help define the scopes of the aims. And then when proposing aims, it can help to start with the safe ones and then end with the risky ones. So perhaps your first aim is maybe halfway done, you've developed the methods, and maybe you've even collected some data, and it's looking like it has a high probability of success. Maybe for your second aim, you develop the methods and either haven't collected data yet or have some preliminary data, and it could still go in different directions. And for your third aim, the riskiest, maybe you've just started brainstorming. Regardless, each aim should support the overall goal of your research proposal, and each aim should be specific and concrete with its own rationale, methods, expected results, and challenges and solutions. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. So here are 2 aims, where for the first aim, our technical task is to produce the next iteration of the light water reactor multi-metallic layered composite. And then the expected results are that the alloy choices, layer thicknesses, compositions, and processing parameters will be improved from the first production run based on microstructural analysis of the DOE MMLC. So explicitly naming the methods and the materials. And then the second task is to apply a new outer layer coating to the second version of the MMLC. The rationale is that the goal of this coating will be to eliminate the deposition of the corrosion product adhesion, or CRUD, great acronym, using the Lifshitz theoretical formulation of the Haymaker constant, the methods, ultimately to minimize the attractive force between CRUD and the MMLC, the expected results. So how are those aims then situated within a grant proposal? I'm going to show you 2 examples of grant proposal structure diagrams, one for a general grant proposal and then one for the NSF GRFP. Now for this more general grant proposal, they can be many pages long, and the need to know information is at the top, summarized usually in a research abstract, and then there's a specific aims page which combined gives a reviewer everything they need to know to understand why the grant proposal is compelling and should be funded. And then because it can be longer, it then goes back and revisits those, fleshing out the motivation and impact, any preliminary data, the specific research plan, and then additional personnel and budget. The NSF GRFP research plan is only 2 pages, and so there isn't the space to put everything up front and then go back and flesh everything out. This research plan structure follows a little bit more of a hourglass, where the introduction establishes significance immediately related to the intellectual merit and broader impact that will be spelled out at the end, and then goes into what the status quo is, the gap that you're focusing on, and then the research that you're doing, how it's going to fill the gap, how your research is creative or transformative, the 2 to 3 specific aims that are going to stand alone but also synergize, and then the research plan for each aim, ending with the future intellectual merit and broader impacts. So now is your opportunity to look at an example NSF GRFP research plan. This is going to be the research plan that is associated with the personal statement that you already read for your discipline. So as you're reading through it, again, ask yourself, what criteria or keywords do you see reflected in the proposal? What's memorable about the proposal? What would you say is this applicant's personal brand combined with the personal statement? And then if a client came to you with this research proposal, what open questions might you ask this client? So please take a few minutes to read through this, about 5 minutes, and then please discuss this with a partner, and we'll move on. Wrapping up, I want to remind you that there is a coaching guide for fellowships, grants, and grad school applications summarizing what this training covered that you can reference with clients in the future. And lastly, I want to give credit to everyone involved in the creation of this training.